The girl went to the bus stop and disappeared, and 2 days later her body was found a few kilometers away. The police launched an investigation, but they were unable to find any leads or clues. For 38 years, this case remained unsolved, and only in the 22nd year, innovative technologies in the field of criminology finally helped to solve this dark mystery. In this video, we will tell you what happened to Mary Jane Thompson and how science is changing the approach to solving such cases. Mary Jane Thompson was born on October 5, 1962 in Houston, Texas. She grew up in a friendly and loving family. She also had many friends, and even in her school years, the girl decided that she wanted to become a model. After her studies, she moved to Los Angeles, where she lived for a while in pursuit of her dream. After that, she decided to move to Dallas to take acting classes there. At that time, the girl was 21 years old. She had to get 2 jobs to pay rent and courses. Mary worked as a waitress and a salesman in a flower shop, devoting the rest of her time to her dream of becoming a model. She lived in such a busy rhythm for about 6 months. On February 11, 1984, Mary phoned her mother and said she was going to go to the hospital because she was worried about some minor problem. The girl went there in the evening. She had to take a bus from her apartment to the clinic. When she arrived at the place, the hospital was already closed, and she had to wait for the bus again to go back. But no one has seen Mary since. The girl did not contact her relatives, but they were in no hurry to raise the alarm. Mary combined 2 jobs with acting courses, so often she simply did not have enough time to call her parents. 2 days later, the Dallas Police Department received a call. Someone's body was found near the abandoned railway tracks behind the warehouses. Detectives who arrived at the scene saw a young girl with signs of strangulation. Documents were found with her, thanks to which the victim was quickly identified. She turned out to be Mary Jane Thompson. Medical experts examined the body and came to the conclusion that she was killed a few days ago. In those years, this area was mainly occupied by warehouses, most of which were empty. For this reason, Mary was noticed only 2 days later. Experts also found that the cause of the girl's death was strangulation, and an unknown criminal used her own gaiters. He also subjected Mary to violence, due to which criminologists were able to extract his biological material. However, in the 84th year, this evidence was completely useless, since they could not even extract a sample of the killer's DNA from it, let alone establish his identity. But even in those years, the police had to store such samples in laboratory conditions, since the leadership of law enforcement agencies hoped that with the development of technology they would be able to solve such cases sooner or later. After examining the scene of Mary's murder, the investigators did not find any evidence. The warehouse behind which her body was found was located about 5 kilometers from the hospital, in a remote industrial area. After talking with friends and relatives of the girl, they were able to more accurately build the expected chronology of events. Seeing that the clinic was already closed, Mary had to walk some distance to the bus stop to go home. Apparently, the criminal attacked her there, after which he loaded the girl into a car and drove her to the place where her body was found. In the absence of any evidence, investigators began to look closely at previously convicted men who lived and worked in this area. But this line of investigation did not bring any results. The police were sure that the killer knew the area well. He not only managed to kidnap the girl in such a place, somewhere completely unnoticed, but also took her to the abandoned railway tracks, which were closed from prying eyes by warehouses. The investigators also did not have any witnesses who could even catch a glimpse of Mary Jane that evening. There were no surveillance cameras in those years either, except for the most important streets of the city. Thus, this case very quickly reached a dead end. He was handed over to the Unsolved Homicide Unit, which was supposed to periodically resume such investigations. This happened only 25 years later, in the year 2009. The Dallas Police Department decided to investigate this murder again using new technologies. Experts were able to extract a DNA sample from biological material found on Mary Jane's body. But that was the end of their luck. The sample was run through all available databases, but its owner was not there. This could indicate that he had never been prosecuted for serious crimes before, or was involved in those years when DNA samples had not yet been taken from such criminals. As a result, the detectives had only one thing left: to periodically run this sample through the databases with the expectation that its owner would be caught in some other crime. Such cases occur quite often, in connection with which investigators uncover even the most hopeless cases. Once again, this case was resumed 9 years later, in the 2018. Then Detective Noah Camacho turned for help to an independent organization that focused on solving violent crimes, and also developed various tools and measures in an attempt to reduce the number of such cases. Together with the detectives, they tried to ensure that more resources were allocated to the Mary Jane case, necessary for conducting the latest DNA research. And only 2 years later, in the 2020, the FBI joined this investigation. At that time, the Bureau had already collected a huge number of old unsolved cases in which investigators had a DNA sample of the criminal, but they never managed to find the suspect. With the development of technology, all these murders have gained significant chances of being solved thanks to genetic genealogy. This technology, which appeared relatively recently, has become a real breakthrough in criminology. It works something like this. Experts are studying a DNA sample of an unknown person using the latest equipment. Based on the data obtained, a profile is formed by which you can find his relatives. The DNA of family members can get into databases in several ways. Firstly, they can be criminals themselves and get into the FBI database. Secondly, these people can voluntarily contribute their DNA to publicly available databases designed to search for relatives or establish their ancestry. Such services have become especially popular in recent years, which only went into the hands of detectives. In the case of Mary Jane's murder, the search took 2 years. First, the experts found his distant relatives on a DNA sample, after which the most difficult thing began. They had to study the biographies of several thousand people, weed out all the unsuitable ones and choose the one who was more likely to be the killer. Screening takes place on such grounds as age, place of residence at the time of the murder, and so on. The situation is complicated by the fact that DNA databases only point experts to a certain group of relatives, but there are no DNA samples for comparison. There is only one way out here: to choose the most suitable candidate and get his DNA. In 2022, detectives received from experts the name of a man who could be Mary Jane's killer. They studied his biography, and then decided to follow him. After waiting for the right moment, the police got an object from which they could take a DNA sample. The laboratory conducted the necessary tests and came to the conclusion that his DNA completely matches the sample of Mary's killer. This man turned out to be 60-year-old Edward Morgan from Dallas. As the police suspected, he lived near the murder scene, just 1 kilometer away. At that time he was only 22 years old. In February, Morgan was arrested and charged with murder. He is currently in custody awaiting trial. Bail is set at $500,000. The police have not yet disclosed any details from the life of this man, they will become known only during the court session. But one thing can be said with complete certainty: a sample of biological material found on the victim's body completely matches his DNA. During the press conference, investigators expressed confidence that Morgan will be found guilty and will be punished. For what he did in Texas, he faces the death penalty. Unfortunately, Mary Jane's parents did not live to see this moment. Her father, who tried to get justice for his daughter to the last, died in the 2020 year, and her mother even earlier. Of her closest relatives, only her sister remained, who was shocked by the call from the police. 38 years later, the detective informed her that they finally knew the name of the killer, and he was arrested. In her social network, her sister constantly wrote about Mary Jane, congratulating her on her birthday, and said that she would never stop hoping for a solution to this case. After learning about the arrest of Edward Morgan, the woman wished him to lead the rest of his life behind bars. She also promised to attend every court session until the final point is put in this case. Thus, genetic genealogy opens up unprecedented opportunities for detectives. Before the invention of this direction, the police had to search for criminals by evidence or with the help of witnesses. The presence of a DNA sample never guaranteed that it would help to find the killer. But now experts on the slightest sample are able to find even the most distant relatives and, ultimately, establish the identity of the owner. The only thing that prevents absolutely all such cases from being solved so far is the limitations of DNA databases. Despite the fact that according to one person, experts can identify several thousand of his relatives, this is still not enough. However, science does not stand still, and in the foreseeable future we may see such technologies that, based on a single DNA sample, will be able to easily establish the identity of any person. Even now, experts can create an approximate portrait of the owner of DNA, and this direction is only at the beginning of its development. Share your opinion about this story in the comments, and don't forget to like it to help promote this video. I also recommend that you subscribe to our Telegram channel, where we publish for you the most interesting and relevant criminal news from around the world. You will find a link to it in the description of the video. Thanks for watching.